All right, hello everybody. So I'm Tiffany, and this is Robin. If you want to tell
Hello.
anything about your channel.
Yes, I'm at the book Wormhole. My channel talks mostly about science fiction, so today's read is very appropriate for the type of stuff I talk about on my channel. Um, yeah, mostly sci-fi there, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will be discussing The Fifth Wave today. So we did a buddy read this month, and one of my all-time favorite books. This was amazing.
Yeah, I had this one on my TBR specifically because it was like the only book that you had rated 5 stars when we first met.
Yeah.
Um, as I'm sure everyone here knows, Tiffany's a very hard rater,
Mhm.
so not many books get the privilege of being rated 5 stars by her. So I was like, okay, like I gotta check this out. Plus, it's sci-fi too, so. And then I just so happened to get it at a library book sale, so I only spent $1 on it for a hardcover copy of the book, which was such a good deal.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah. And yeah, it just like worked out that we planned on doing a buddy read of it together. Sorry, I have to watch the dog. Come here,
Oh,
girl.
of
Come here.
course.
Do you want to say hi? She's a little camera shy. Yeah, okay. She doesn't wanna. There's no making her do anything she doesn't want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. But regarding what you were talking about with the 5-star rating and everything, I am pleased to announce that now technically, yes, I rated 5 books this year 5 stars, but it included The Fifth Wave since we did buddy read it. So I'm really counting 4 new books I gave 5 stars, which is very amazing because that's a major improvement from like so many years prior. So
That's really good news. I'm glad that you had 4 other books that you liked as much as this one.
yeah, but I think another thing was I mean, I'm always a harsh critic, but like lately, especially once I started booktube and like I started thinking more critically and like I have to rate it some sort of star, and I'm like, well, I didn't really like it, so 1 star, and that's all I really went with. But then there are other books that I'm like, if I could rate it 0, I would be very happy with that.
Yeah, there needs to be a rating harsher than 1 star, you know?
Swear, seriously, like, I mean, honestly, like, there were so many books that I'm like, I could really, like, if I could send it to the ground, bury it, like, never see it again, never hear from it, I'd be very happy.
You rate it or bury it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, so The Fifth Wave, do you want to start talking about it? What do you want to do?
Yeah, I don't know if you wanted to give a brief summary of what the book's about for anyone who might not be familiar with it yet. Um,
Yeah.
we can always collab on that too.
Oh, absolutely. So The Fifth Wave is about this girl, Cassie. So, she's a part of the world where aliens have come to Earth, and they've been eliminating and exterminating the human race through these waves. And every single time it just keeps on dwindling. They've lost about like 97% of the
Mhm.
world's population. Um, and I thought, I'll just say, like, it's very much, at least in her perspective, where it's, what it, I mean, it's really how COVID is for us with the whole, like, isolation. You're kind of, like, stuck in your own head and kind of miserable. And it's like, this hits too hard right now. But anyway, and then we also have the perspective of zombie, where it's the government and they are set to fight against the aliens. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, one of the things that was both like kind of scary about it, but also really cool is how relevant it seemed to what we're going through right now. Um, and one of the scenes in it that really stood out to me was when the mothership was in Earth's orbit and Cassie goes on a date with a guy that she doesn't really like. And just that like scenario of like how mundane it is when something serious is happening. I feel like that is something that we've experienced a lot of when like with this pandemic, is that like something serious is happening right now, and yet you still have to do these mundane little things like that. And yeah, I just really loved how that was put in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll also say too, we're kind of branching more into the spoilers since we will be discussing it. So to anyone, spoilers coming now. I will say Zombie's perspective, where he was talking about how in the first, was it 7-10 days, something like that?
Oh,
Um,
I don't remember the timeline.
yeah, it was something like that. Like the first few days, there was no communication. No one knew what was going on. And he was talking about the fact that besides going to school and doing normal things, there were all sorts of people that were like making memes and just making jokes, and it's like that is so realistic. That's
Mhm.
exactly what we'd be doing if we had an alien apocalypse. We'd like, yep, this is happening. And it's
Yeah.
like a perfect coping mechanism. It's like, yep. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the things I really liked about this book is how true it felt to the teen narrative. It didn't feel like it was like trying too hard to be relevant to teens. It just felt very naturally like these two characters are both in their teens. Which is something like I feel like young adult has such a hard time mastering. That's part of the reason I don't like reading it so much, because it will either feel too young or they will feel too mature for their age.
Exactly.
And with young adult, it's kind of you're at a mix. There's some things that are a bit more mature, and there are things that you're still a child growing out of it. And I think this book, especially with like Cassie's tone, she had a very sarcastic way in her narration. I felt like she just so naturally felt young adults, and that it just very felt organic and believable.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, So I'll say this is just from my personal experience, differences from how I read it the first time I read it back in 2013 when it first came out versus now. First time I read it like hardcover, all good. Oh my gosh, I loved it so much. And I just remember that thing where she was like, if any alien is reading this, bite me. I'm just like, I love that. Like,
Yeah.
go hard for it, Cassie. That's great. Um, but this year I read it. I did audiobook and I did ebook because I don't have it.
Mhm.
There's been multiple times since it's been like 8 years since I read it. Multiple times where I'm like, this is like my favorite book. Why don't I have it? But it's like I'm fine. I have access to it, and that's okay. But it was just for the past little while I've been having trouble um just like having a physical book or even an ebook and like reading it and like understanding it. So I
Mhm.
was like, I'm gonna have to do the audiobook. But Cassie's uh voice actor, narrator, whatever, oh my gosh, she was so bad. It kind of ruined her perspective for me.
No.
I know.
Oh, that's so
Like,
devastating to hear.
I know, because she was one of my favorite characters. Like, I love her so much. Like, she's so sarcastic, and I'm very sad because, like I said, with this new person reading it, she did not come across sarcastic almost at all. I was like, and then
That's
the
so
fact you were saying
weird.
she's sarcastic, I saw reviews saying she's sarcastic. I'm like, am I reading this wrong? And it's like, no, her tone is just coming across so wrong. I hated it.
That's terrible. So anyone in the audience, beware that audiobook might not be the best way to read this book, but literally the way Cassie is written, she's just so distinctly sarcastic. Like, I don't know how they messed up that bad, because I feel like it's so apparent in the writing that you know that she's, being a little snarky. Um, that just sucks though. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I will say this, like I told you before, Robin, and to everyone who's watching, uh, when I was reading Zombie for the first time, I really hated his perspective, and I even
Hmm.
like blocked it out of my memory. I totally forgot about him even being like in the book. Like I knew about the character. I'm not going to reveal the name because we don't have to spoil that. But uh this time around, the voice actor was great. That narrator did such a good job. I was very impressed. Now, I'll get into the problems with both these narrators, but one thing I was just like so impressed, and like I was able to like I actually liked Zombie this time, so I was like, "Oh, this is great. I can finally at least change my tune there." But I'm very sad about Cassie because it's like she was like my favorite. It made me very sad.
She
But also,
really made it.
yeah, right. But the narrators, for these ones, like they had a very weird way of talking. So, like at the end of a sentence, the way you talk sometimes. I don't know an example, but it's like I go to the mall, and they go, I go to the mall. Like they spoke so much in like such a weird way. Like I can't exactly show a unless I like shared a clip, which I probably couldn't find. I'd be like, okay, this is too hard. But they spoke so weird, and it totally ruins like the pace of how a sentence goes. It was very weird, like the way they would read this off. I was like, also, sometimes they would speak in like, your normal monotonous, the way you do an audiobook. But then there were other times where they'd say it so fast, and I understood because there were times where it's like they're kind of panicking or
Yeah.
they're rushed. I get it, but some of it was just like, okay, this is too much. They were, I don't know exactly how they were directed, how these people were chosen because they did not understand the assignment.
It almost sounds like it's like AI generated. Like, that's what I'm thinking. Like, if you ever, I don't know if you've ever done like text to speech, like
Oh
AI
yeah,
generations, and like it'll kind of, yeah, be like, it won't get those, sort of like sentence ends and stuff like that, because it's just
yeah.
reading the words. But that's so weird, because like, for how big the book was, you think they would have a better budget to hire good actors to read the book.
Oh yeah,
But
absolutely. It made me very sad, but like I said, I don't know what my problem is. I've just been having for the past like month where I just can't like read. I gotta have someone reading it, or I have to literally say out loud, and you have no idea how tired that mouth gets. It's like, I'm done. I can't read anymore. So it was like, it's the only way I could have read it this month. Glad I did, but also it makes me sad. Like, I still had a 5-star experience, but a little bit of like, what happened?
yeah, that is weird. So I know, when I first got to the section with zombie, I was first of all really shocked, because I think it was literally at like page 100 that the perspective finally switches from Cassie to zombie. So first of all, I was like, what's going on? Like, we spent so long with Cassie, why the sudden POV switch? And I know, like, the first sentence was like, call me zombie. I think I didn't fully understand that zombie was a different character and not Cassie. So I think for me it was just really jarring, and like, every time it changed POV, it would be like a different section in the book. So they were obviously divided, but still, I think once you started reading each section, I don't think he did a very good job of establishing who was talking, which kind of annoyed me. but I did end up warming up to Zombie. Kind of what I didn't like about his perspective at first is just like we go from Cassie's perspective, which is like completely isolated. She doesn't trust anyone. Like she's like constantly feeling hunted, and it just really set this wonderful tone for the story. And Zombie's story starts with him being rescued, and I didn't like that contrast because it kind of ruined the build up that Cassie had. But I started to warm up to it a little bit more when um his storyline kind of started to reveal that things aren't as they really seem, and it matched that same paranoia that you were getting from Cassie's storyline. And then I started to appreciate it a little bit more because now I'm like, oh, like something's definitely going on. I don't know what it is and I don't know why it's happening, but I'm definitely interested to see what will happen. And I think that's like one of the strongest forces in the book is just like that feeling of paranoia and that you can't trust anyone.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'll say this, since again, like I said, it's been eight years since I first read the book. So like there were so many like times and scenes and like just the overall, like even though I knew like I I I guess the bones of it, like that's all I really knew of it. I just couldn't remember like very much the details. So with the oh, what was his name? The commander guy, Vosh or something
Bosh,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah, Vosh. So like Vosh and the people, or at least Vosh himself, I got confused with him. I couldn't remember if he was a bad guy or not. And when he was telling Zombie, "Oh, I couldn't trust these people, so I decided, you know what? I made the decision to take out these people all up from 15 up. I went to this camp. I rescued the kids, but I decided to get rid of everyone. I killed every single person there." And so I was thinking, well, that's what happened with Cassie, so that has to be what he's talking about. And then I'm like, the way he was acting, I'm just like, is he just another one like her? Is he like her where she's trying, just trying to survive, but just can't trust anyone? And so I
Hmm.
kept on being like, what kind of person is he? I couldn't remember that he was the bad guy because it's like, especially with that part and what they were talking about, and like just the thought that like even though there are really bad people in certain places, maybe there's some good people, and I
Hmm.
just couldn't remember. Yep, he's of course the main leader bad guy, and I'm like, oh, that's right.
That's fun. I'm glad that like you were able to kind of re-experience that a bit since yeah, and I know you have read this one before, and I was curious to know like was it really just like, you know, things that you like remembered most of it and it just kind of felt redundant, or were you able to actually like get to experience some of that suspense again?
Oh yeah, like I mean, it's so hard. Like, if I was reading it right now, I'd be able to like say, I'd be like, oh yeah, this part, this part, this part. Now I'm kind of like, yeah, there's definitely things I didn't remember and other things I did, or like the basic idea. But one thing I did forget about was, I know it's not like a huge detail or whatever, but I did forget about Evan. When he called Cassie a mayfly, I totally forgot about that. I'm like, Mayfly? I don't remember this at all. It's not the biggest deal, but it's just like, oh, right.
It's a small detail, but also like it's a lasting one too, so I
Oh,
can
yeah.
kind of
Yeah,
understand
it's
why
very
that stood
important.
out.
Especially when she keeps on comparing herself to a cockroach and it's like, you're the mayfly. And it's like, oh. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not, oh. It's so hard with like things that you get spoiled by and you don't want to say anything. All I'll say is the concept of the mayfly. is kind of important for her story, but I'm not going to spoil anything. I never read the other two books,
I
but
was
I
gonna
know
ask.
something about it. So,
Oh, okay. I haven't read the other two either. I mean, we could always buddy read those
yeah,
too.
I'm kind of thinking about, like, I'm kind of like, well, I never read the books. Maybe I should stay that way. And other times I'm like, what if I do? So, that could be up for 2022. We could think about that.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so what is something that shocked you in the book? Maybe something that shocked you.
Ooh. I'm trying to think because overall, I felt like I had a pretty good grasp on everything that was happening. I think one of the things he did really well is foreshadowing. Um, so there's not much that was like, oh my god, I didn't see that coming. Oh wait, it's a spoiler if I say the one that I didn't
Well, I mean,
actually.
we already put the spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the one thing that I didn't see coming at all was I don't remember his name, but whoever the like drill sergeant guy was, that was
Oh,
training all the
yeah.
soldiers
I'm trying.
when
Yeah, I forget his name. Go ahead.
I don't have the book near me to look. Um, when he was present at their first mission after training, and he was firing at them like a sniper on a building, and pretty much his role was to kind of stir up trouble, to get them motivated to actually kill these infested people. Um, that I definitely didn't see coming. I had already kind of figured out what was going on with the soldiers
Oh,
at
nice.
this point. But I like that extra added twist in there, and it really just kind of went to show the lengths they were going to accomplish what they set out to do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Can you close the door? Okay.
I'll say, with what you were shocked about, that is something I totally forgot about. So it was a nice thing for me to be like, "Oh, hey, that happened," but
Mhm.
I had no recollection of that. I'm like, "Oh, no." I was like, "Oh my gosh," because I was confused. I was confused why it was like, "Oh, he's got nothing," because I couldn't remember when, like, every single time when they do the green and the red, and I'm
Mhm.
like, which one? Which one is the problem? Which isn't? And I couldn't remember. I was like,
I really liked the green and the red thing, just because, like, as someone who plays video games, like, red always means enemy.
oh,
Um, so for me, like, I loved um, that, like, symbolism kind of going on, that and it kind of was one of the things that cued me off in the first place of what was going on, is that for once, red is the good guys and the people they're attacking are green. So for me, I really liked that kind of, like, somewhat flip, but also, like, I think he did that very purposely to kind of cue off readers that, like, oh, like, that's weird. Usually green means good and red means bad, you know? I know it's so childish to, like, dumb it down to that, but, like, that's immediately what came to mind whenever that, like, green versus red came up.
oh yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, absolutely. So if you had to pick one character, which would be your favorite?
I really liked the presence of Sammy in this book. I feel like we so rarely get to see child characters who act like genuine children. And he was kind of like the driving motivation throughout the book. And also, I liked that he has connections to both Cassie and Zombie. Like, I absolutely love multiple POV books like that, where you're following two different characters who are kind of taking their separate storylines and then they finally reconverge. That is like, I love that. It's so cool when it's done right, and this book does it really well. And Sammy is kind of the character that connects both of the narratives.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll say, regarding that, when they unite or whatever, and it's the whole thing where Zombie's there, then there's Cassie and Sammy, and like they're just, the guns are at each other. It's like, that was so tense, and I totally forgot about that, because I did remember that Zombie couldn't remember her, but I thought Cassie, like, obviously, and like at first it was like he was blocked, and then once she saw his face, she knew. But I swear, I thought, like, there is that whole thing where it's like, remember the babies, but I could have sworn there was like this part during their little first time meeting again where she's awkwardly saying, remember the babies? And he's like, what? And that didn't happen. I'm like, what? How am I remembering that? And then, like, only at the very, very end that it's said, I'm like,
Yeah.
that wasn't exactly how I remember that. So, but then I watched a book review of it, and someone said it like that, and I'm like, maybe I'm remembering it because of them. So
Oh. Uh-huh.
maybe one of those things where it's like, it actually wasn't even in the book. You just remember something related to it, and then it becomes the memory. It's like, oh, that wasn't right.
Yeah, memory's faulty like that. It messes with you.
Yeah. So what did you think of Evan?
I feel like when it comes to what I don't want to say what I didn't like about the book, but what I felt like was kind of lacking about the book entirely revolves around Evan's character. Um, I did like, well, first, I don't like the chapter that he gets to be the narrator for a very brief moment. I kind of feel like that was pointless, and it kind of spoils what would next happen with Cassie. And a lot of Cassie and Evan's interactions are she doesn't know if she can trust him. Uh, and, he takes her in and he cares for her. And a lot of the things he does for her are things that she has written about in her diary. One of the first moments that stood out to me that definitely said he has read her diary is that he makes her a hamburger, and she said that that's the one thing from pre invasion life that she really missed. So I think that did well to set up the mistrust between them, or that like there's definitely something else going on with this character. But I think like once like his true identity, I guess, quote unquote, was revealed, I felt like I wanted just a little bit more there. I don't know if in the other two books in this series, if like that's something that's going to be elaborated on, but I really just want to know more about like the true Evan, if that makes sense. Are you okay if I start talking about spoilers? Because
No, like I said, go with the spoilers. That's kind of what we're doing here. But I'll say, the way I remember it, I thought like there was like something so great about Evan, or I felt like there was something so good and human about him. He was kind of a creep. I was a little
yeah,
like, oh, I don't like that. Also, maybe it was like they were, with given the narrative, maybe a lot more time passed. But when they kissed, I was like, what? Like, we're doing it this fast? I was a little like, Shh, what? What's going
I
on?
I definitely thought Evan was ready for the kiss. I wasn't convinced Cassie was, if that
I,
makes
yeah, I
sense.
just thought
So,
he was a little, he was too interested too quickly and really didn't
mhm.
let her. I mean, especially because of how, it's, established to us how she can't just trust people. And
Mhm.
given the fact that he also has read what we've read, he should have some understanding. That's another thing too, where it's kind of like how human is he? Like obviously there are some things he doesn't seem to understand, and it's like
Mhm.
he should understand boundaries. He was taught, you know, he was
Right.
raised. So
So, okay, so going into the spoilers about Evan, it is revealed that he is one of the infested pretty much, and that he pretty much has had this, like, it almost seems like the alien portion of him has been alive for like centuries. And then that alien part of him was like inserted when he was in the womb and pretty much has been asleep until like I think in his teens it finally activated. So there's a part of him that is definitely human and should know about boundaries, you know, because he's lived that life. And then there's the other part of him that is alien. I think the concept is super super cool, but it didn't go deep enough, like I said, and I know like he like mentions that he was like one of the aliens that was opposed to the invasion, and I wish that was like just a little more elaborated on because I feel like it would be like both cool and like really understandable for his motivations if he was like, you know, this alien being who has been watching humanity for like centuries and just has really fallen in love with it, you know, like I feel like that would make sense why he kind of ends up latching on to Cassie because, you know, the alien part of him loves humanity and then the human part of him is still human, you know. And also just like I kind of just want to know, like, what was it like for him as someone who's grown up human for at least a decade, and then one day the alien portion woke up and suddenly he understood that an invasion would be coming and that pretty much all of humanity would be eradicated. And like, what would that be like? Because that would like I can only imagine it would be so hard to go through, especially as someone who's lived a normal life and like oh, I have like friends and family and all these wonderful humans I am connected to, and knowing that they're going to be doomed and that you're probably going to have to kill them too. Like, that's just such a cool perspective that the book never goes into, and I really wish it did.
yeah, that definitely would have been cool. I do remember it said, you know, he's supposed to be like 18 or 19 years old, and it said that he woke up 4 years prior to the attacks.
Hmm.
You know, then he became the silence or whatever. But I mean, that would be crazy. It's just you have to go about your normal life, but it's like, you know, it. What you're saying, I mean, that would be a pretty uh rough conflict, and that's what I kind of feel like. I feel like maybe if we actually got his perspective, like in general, I feel like we would have liked him more. I just
Hmm.
thought he was so creepy when he would speak to Cassie, and just his vibe was a little,
It was very stalkerish.
yeah.
Like, literally stalking her, actually, so.
It was, yeah, like that, of course. I also want to say too, just the way he talked and like didn't really understand what she was talking about or understand that she didn't understand what he was talking about. Like
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing where he's like, I am human and I'm other. I am none and I am both. And it's like, let her understand a little bit easier. Can you kind of
Yeah.
break it down for her? And I also thought the whole thing where he's like, okay, I can't exactly tell you how it works, but let me show you. And the
Hmm.
whole thing where it's like he goes into her mind, I personally didn't fully feel like it was described
I
well.
was gonna say, I wish that was, yeah, described a bit more because it was kind of like I think it was literally just like, yeah, let me go into your mind, and she's like, okay, and then it ends there. I wish we actually got to see that instead of just seeing like the after effects of it.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
yeah,
I know that she describes it like, um, it's like their souls were like together, aligned, whatever. She called it like more intimate than her body. I guess it's like one of those things like when people talk about like something very weird in the mind, it just doesn't quite make sense unless you're really good at describing. And I didn't think
yeah.
it was really done well, described well. It was just a little like, what?
It was like that basic concept of like the combining of the consciousness. That's like a really common thing in sci-fi, but I feel like he depended too much on readers to already be familiar with that. Whereas, yeah, he should have honestly broken it down a little bit more, because not everyone who's gonna pick up this book definitely hasn't read like, hard science fiction before, so
Well, that helps me at least understand that then, there is more explained stuff in other stories because I was a little like, huh? I thought it was just a little weird scene because it's like, it lasts for like a paragraph and she's like, whoa. I was like, okay.
like what?
I was just kind of like, huh? I thought it was very weird. But what did you think of Ringer?
I liked her, but I don't. One thing that annoyed me is when Cassie finally gets to meet her and she's talking about her pores, and I'm like, shut up! Like that's so annoying. Um, but otherwise, I liked Ringer's presence. Mostly to kind of balance out the book. I think we really needed like more female characters and more that act in different ways, and Ringer's presence and Teacups, I think just having those two other like woman characters just like, yeah, just really kind of help flesh out the story. I don't necessarily know if I like her with Zombie, if we're talking shipping wise, but yeah, I thought she was cool. What about you?
Um, well, I know I didn't like Ringer the first time around. I thought she was better this time, and I don't know exactly if I feel a certain way. I just feel like her character didn't really get an opportunity to really
Mm,
shine. Like her, uh, well, it's not screen time, but you know what I mean. Her time, on the page was just like nothing. But I thought it was very interesting because regarding what you're saying with the female characters, I'll just say like I'm just gonna consider Ringer one of the main characters because I mean
mhm,
we got at least insight into her perspective or her motivations. I felt that Cassie, she was just there to survive and like I guess she was more self-sacrificing for her brother wanting to survive, but like I guess the brother's the most important part because she was kind of like whatever it takes. So
mhm,
that part, I felt like Zombie, obviously with the whole thing where Vosh really manipulated him, where he's like, if he told me right now to shoot myself, I would. I was like, what? You tell me why would you even think that? That's ridiculous. So I thought his like following every rule, listening, being indoctrinated. I mean, I know he's a kid, so I can understand, but it's also like, oh, that makes me feel sad. It's kind of like you don't even try to value your life after all these people died. But anyway, and then Ringer, I thought she had a very interesting perspective where she was like, well, all the army and everyone was like, um, we're all going to die, but at least we can get, kick some alien butt. It's like, and I just thought it was good of her that she still kept her motivation. She's like, she does want to live, she does want to survive. And I'm
mhm,
like, that's right. So I feel like, and that's the thing too with the whole thing where she wanted to be, the top leader. She wanted to be tough, or at least, she's not gonna be pushed around by anyone. I thought that was really good, especially for the situation that they're in. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, but I thought even though she didn't get that much time, I thought at least her character had some interesting elements to it. Even though maybe I personally wasn't a huge fan, I thought she had some good points.
Yeah. I think she did bring a lot to the story just by being there, but yeah, I kind of get what you mean too. Yeah. I wanna like go back to what you said about Zombie and Bosch and how he was just like ready to die for this guy. I actually really liked that scene just because like again it just showed how like insane this idea was, and also how indoctrinated, like you said, everyone was. And yeah, for me, I feel like that moment really defined like what was going on there, as well as like why they decided kids only instead of adults, because I feel like they really wanted people who would be vulnerable and manipulated in that way, and it just like it really just showed like the fruits of Vosh's labors in that moment. So I thought that was pretty cool, and also to have that be something for Zombie to bounce back from too. You know, that was probably Zombie's lowest moments as a character. You know, where he was just like so committed to this and doesn't even realize he's being used.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'd like to go back to what I was talking about with obviously when Sammy gets picked up and they take the kids on the buses to the sanctuary. Now I know they want to keep Sammy in that one place and Cassie over here, but the whole thing where it's like they're you know, they're supposed to be taking the kids, and
Hmm.
Zombie is 17. So I was
Hmm.
like, but Cassie's 16. Why wouldn't they take her? Like I said, the whole thing, they got to be separated. I just didn't feel it made much sense. And at first, I'm like, once Bosch said he decided to kill everyone 15 and up, I'm like, okay, that's a reason. But then once it's like, oh, Vosh is a bad guy, then I'm like, but how does that make sense? So I thought that was a little bit of a plot hole there because it was like, how did it doesn't make sense to me because it's like we say up to a certain age, but then you have a character who's even a little older than the
Hmm.
character that wasn't eligible to be there. I yeah.
That's an issue I have with the book too, actually, because it was an inconsistency, and not even just Zombie. I think like Ringer was older, and a couple of the other guys. I honestly, some of the guys in the crew, I don't remember their names, but there was definitely like people older than 14 there. Um, and it just, so why wasn't Cassie allowed on the bus? And even in like Sammy's like recollection of that event, like he even like notes that like, but there was room on the bus. Why wasn't she allowed on? And it's like, yeah, why wasn't she allowed on? You know, it just they never really gave an explanation for it, and it really just seems like it happened that way because like they needed it to happen that way for the
Yeah,
story to happen. So
absolutely.
yeah.
I'll tell you too, though. I mean, even though don't watch the movie. The movie sucks. It's
I
horrible.
was gonna ask
It is
about
like, I mean, it's totally disrespecting, trashing the book. It's unbelievable. But one thing, um, is that in the movie they changed it to she is on the bus. Then they but Sammy forgot the bear, so she goes to their camp to get the bear, but then the buses start going, and so she chases after the bus, and the bus goes without her. So at least it was like, okay, she missed it. It's still a dumb reason, but she missed it.
right.
Even though I don't really like it, because I still liked it where it's like, okay, to him, to Sammy, he thought everything's fine. He's waving, all gleeful, whatever. But it still doesn't make sense that she wouldn't that it would that she wouldn't be able to get on the bus. That's so dumb.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's almost like like I wish like maybe the scene went like maybe she originally lies about her age and makes herself seem older and be like, well, I'm his mother or something, like if she lied that she was like, I don't know, 22, like that might be believable. And then the people are like, oh well, we don't want adults on the bus, so you're not allowed. And she's like, oh crap, I shouldn't have lied about my age. Like that would make sense. But yeah, I do really like that mental image that the book has that I assume the movie didn't, with Sammy on the bus waving, and
Oh yeah.
even just the imagery of a yellow school bus, like that is so jarring compared to like the gritty like post-apoc world we've seen in the book so far. That was so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Um oh, I was gonna say something regarding that. Shoot. Um I'm just trying to think here, like what they could do or say to make it like I was just thinking maybe one of the reasons, since obviously they want to get the kids because they need to be easily able to be manipulated, and considering the fact that Cassie was fighting them on it, even though the whole thing where it's like, oh, this up to this age only, I was like, that's weak. But then there's the fact that yes, she was fighting, or at least like I'm not, going without my brother, whatever. I don't know.
Mm,
Part of it's like, okay, maybe that's where the author was going, where it's like, okay, she's kind of showing that she's fighting, so that means that that's why. It's still dumb. It doesn't make sense.
that does make a little sense though, like where you're going with that, but I wish that was more apparent. Like maybe we could see like this change in the bus driver's like attitude once he sees that, like, Cassie's putting up a fight, where he's kind of like, no, you're not allowed.
Yeah, I'm just like I'm trying to think of some reason why, but just the
Mhm.
fact that they were already saying no before she even fought was weird.
Yeah.
I mean, regarding what you're saying though about the faking age, obviously when she was able to get on the bus, she cut her hair, said she was 12. It's like, well, that worked out.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the dad said she's 16, so they're like blah blah blah, but it just
Oh,
doesn't make sense. Anyway, uh, it's just one of those things you gotta accept, even though it doesn't.
right. I'm like, I'll forgive this, but that was like one of the things I'm like, okay, this is just gonna be 4.5 stars for me, because
Oh,
I
you
I
did rate it
usually,
4.5?
yeah, I if it's gonna be a 5 star, it has to be pretty solid to me, and 4.5 stars is still a beloved rating for me. Um, I feel like 3 stars to me is just like, oh, I wasn't overall impressed, like, but it was still enjoyable. And then it starts going into like the I mostly didn't like it versus liked it for 2 stars, and 1 star is like I hated every moment of this book.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's kind of how I rate them. But one other thing I wish that the book kind of explained, and maybe I missed it, but with the red light and green light thing again, I I just want to know what that tool was. It wasn't a thermometer, and it wasn't a device that detects infested or not. So
Well,
was it just something that randomly generated a color just to divide the group?
oh, well, that is a fair point because I was about to say, obviously, with the one of their things like the Wonderland or something like that, and like the like one of those things, they said it was the alien technology.
Wonderland was, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So now that I'm thinking of it, yeah, it is a little like, what was that? I mean, I guess they had to find someone, some kid. They're like, okay, this kid has to be, the different color. But
Yeah, and I mean, kind of what I understood about that process of separating into two groups is, like, I know with Zombie, there was that tent mate I think he had, and then he was tasked to press a single button that would execute his tent mate, um, under the impression that his tent mate wasn't infested, which we learned later on he wasn't actually.
oh,
so I understand why they would want to separate, the people that they take in so they can do that final test of like, what can we convince these people to actually kill, if they thought they knew that this person wasn't infested, even if this person is close to them. So I understand that much, but again, like, it seems like it was something randomly determined, and if that was the case, like, that kind of annoys me that, like, later on when Cassie sneaks onto the bus, like, she gets the green light. So, well, what happened if she got the red light, or was it really just a 50-50% chance that that would happen? I know it's such a minor detail, but for me, I'm like, I want to know. Like,
Oh,
I
it's
want
a
to know
fair
the
point.
specifics.
Yeah. Yeah, fair points there. I mean, obviously, but they did say that Sammy pressed the button for that younger girl too, so it was every single one of them. Because if
Hmm.
they wouldn't, then it's like, okay, we can't even manipulate them with this little thing here, so they can't, it's not gonna work. But
Hmm.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, it had some interesting stuff and maybe it didn't fully expand, but
Yeah. Yeah, other than that, like, don't get me wrong, like, the book was very good. It was very fast paced, and the writing was well done. So overall, I really liked it. Just, those tiny things I didn't.
oh yeah, I mean, there were things where I was like, how does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I just felt like the all the sorts, like you said, the paranoia, just all sorts, like who can you trust, and you're all alone, and all the loneliness, and I mean, I really liked that, even though it was like hard, because like I said, considering the state of the world now, hits a little too close to home, but at the same time, it's like, this is great. Like they did a great job there. Like I'd say that's like one of my favorite parts of her perspective this time around, because it's just like, man, I can relate to that rough stuff. But
It's cool, when that happens, because this book, I think you said, came out in 2013, and that he was able to kind of predict how humans would react in crisis. I think that just really speaks of like how good of a science fiction this is, that it just holds true to now that we are in a pandemic, or what, they didn't have a pandemic, but they had their own issues, but
well,
kind of the
actually, the
similar
third wave
feelings.
was a pandemic, so
Yeah, yeah, that one slightly irked me, just seeing what we've been through, but I think I'm gonna be a little touchy on like uh plague plots for a little bit because of the pandemic, but like the how quickly it just like was came through and was done. I feel like that was unrealistic seeing what we're seeing now, but yeah.
fair. I mean, to be fair, with the virus they had, I mean, it was like, if you have it, you're gonna just like explode. Everything's out. There's no way you could like hide it, or just be like, I'm just gonna chill at home. I'll be fine. No, you didn't.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like that one, it makes a little bit more sense, even though it is a little silly. I mean, just considering the fact that how many people died already, maybe it makes more sense. I don't know. Who even knows? But considering how like fast it was supposed to be, it was like only 4 or 5 months since they've come there. So
Yeah.
I mean, but it also goes to show that how fast they were with this stuff. They're like, okay, let's handle this. Let's get this taken care of. You know?
Yeah, like humanity couldn't catch a break with these guys.
Oh yeah, yeah. And that's also what I'm kind of concerned about, because like I was just like cool with the story, even though I'm like Evan has to be alive. But other than that, it's kind of like, okay, cool, end of the story. I was gonna read the Infinite Sea when it came out. That's the second book.
Yeah.
And I was trying to read reread The Fifth Wave, and I just couldn't. I like got stuck at that point where she went on the date with that guy, and I just got a little bored. I'm like, okay, I'm done. But at least this time I read it. Yeah, but it was a fun time because it was a different experience reading it. It did make me sad though. This has nothing to do with the sake of the book itself. It had to do with I happened to read this review. It was a 1-star review, and it was like talking about all sorts of things in this book come from other sci-fi things, and it's like, dude, there are tropes in stories, and this story itself is doing its own thing. Like, what are you even talking about? Like, you could say that about anything. It was just wrong. But I just hate how sometimes, even though I'm usually strong in my thoughts, sometimes when someone has a negative opinion or a positive opinion on something that I have the opposite opinion on, sometimes I'm a little like, maybe they're right. And it's like, no, stay strong in your convictions. And I'm like, oh man. Especially with the Fifth Wave. It's like I have to keep liking it.
Literally, anytime I read like a 1-star review of a book I've rated 5-star, I'm like, did we read the same thing?
Well, guilty one. 1-star almost all the time.
But like, cause like you said, like people will be like going off about like something that they didn't like about it, and I'm like, what? Like I didn't see that at all about this book, you know. So I try not to read 1-star reviews if I really like something. But I also can respect that, like, you know, different people like different things, and I feel like especially with sci-fi, like people like different things in sci-fi, but also everything's been done before. Like, stop saying that they ripped it off from something else, you know, like such a pretentious review. But then this book just wasn't for them, you know. Like that's fine.
Exactly. But the fact that they were like, oh, this is the worst thing I've ever seen, worst book I've ever read, even worse than Twilight. I'm like, homie, what are you even talking about?
Interesting.
I did not understand that at all. But anyway, yeah, this was very fun. So, is there anything you can think of that like you want to comment for the book?
I gotta say, like, for a pardon thought about the ending, it kind of just ends, and so I'm almost like not sure what the rest of the series is gonna be about, if that makes sense.
No, I totally understand what you're saying. I really, like I said, I never read the other books. I really don't know where it goes from there. It is a little like, okay, what else are you doing? Because, like, I mean, how are you supposed to fight against these aliens? I mean, besides just they're aliens and they've got these abilities, they also had the military. They got all the weapons. How are you supposed to fight against them?
It definitely looks like a hopeless situation, and like I can just kind of accept that, like, at the end of this book they succeeded in what they set out to do, and now it's just about like surviving, you know, and like I'm content with that. But knowing that there's 2 other books, I'm like, well, should I read on? Like I liked it enough to read on, but I'm really just unsure. Yeah, like are they gonna try fighting the aliens? That doesn't seem very realistic for like a group of like 5 teenagers. Like,
Yeah. And I just want to say too, one thing I'm kind of worried about is like, besides just like you said, if they are trying to survive or if they succeed surviving, what about if it is like they just can't? What if it like ends where like just the aliens win? There's just too few of humans.
right.
That'd be so depressing. It's like, give up, guys.
That'd be
That'd be
the worst
horrible.
way to end a trilogy. Like, if you're gonna end like a standalone book that way, I'd be like, okay, fine. Like, that feels like a standard way to end a horror book. But like a trilogy, like, why did I spend 3 books with these people just for
Yeah.
me to kill them all? Like, that sounds horrible. So,
And also too, I have heard people say the people that love the first book hate the other books, or at the very least, the Fifth Wave is great and the other two suck. So I'm kind of like, I really don't want to ruin my experience. Not to mention, too, especially these days, I really do kind of stick with the first book in a series because almost every single time it's like it had a fair concept, or at the very least, it would have worked better as a standalone. And like whatever the sequels or the series itself, it just does not work. And I'm kind of like, the fifth wave did its thing. Great for it. If I really want to know what happens, let me read the synopsis or have someone just spoil it for me. I kind of just don't want to like I know at least one thing is that Ringer gets a perspective in the other book, and I'm kind of like, I just don't really want that personally, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's not something I would want. Hey, maybe she might actually have a really great perspective. I'm not sure, but I just I don't know. It's like one of those conflicting things where I'm like, something that's great. Yeah, I'll say one example is the fact of, like I said, Fifth Wave, ultimate, one of the ultimate 5 stars, and then there's also Angel Fall by Susan E. Highly recommend. It's great, but Angel Fall, it's a trilogy. I read the trilogy. 5 stars for the first book, 1 star for the second book, and the
Ooh.
third book I gave 3 stars. So it was like, no, no, it did not. Like, the first book definitely set up for this future for the sequel and stuff, but it's like,
Mm-hmm.
nope, 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 nope. They should have kept it here. I'm not good with this.
Yeah, I have a hard time with series too, I gotta say. Like, I usually will rate the first book 5 stars, and the other books are like at most a 4 star. Like, it just never feels the same in the second book, even if it's really well set up for. So yeah, I am a little nervous to go on in this series, but I think I want to like at least try reading the second book, and if it really sucks, then I won't read the third book.
Yeah,
Like,
it's kind of like, yep, yeah.
but I also understand
It's-
what you mean about not wanting to ruin the first book, and I totally respect that.
Yeah, I just am like, and that, but I will say one thing is, even though I really did enjoy my experience reading the fifth wave this time around, and like, obviously, we were both able to point out some mistakes. Um, but I feel like this happens for me a lot. Not every book, but usually hindsight is like the worst thing for me. Because I'm like, it really wasn't that good. And it's like, just stop and let it be an enjoyable thing. Like, I don't have to be 100%, this is the best thing ever. And there's nothing that, there's no mistakes whatsoever. You can have mistakes and still love it. You
Mhm.
know, I don't know. There's like something, I know I'm a perfectionist, and so maybe that's also part of it. Besides being a harsh critic perfectionist, it's like everything has to be perfect, and if it's not, it can't possibly be 100% perfect. And I'm like, and that's what I think too. Maybe this next year, 2022, I just won't rate anymore because clearly it just is not working out. Like, I've done better this year, giving more books 2, 3, 4 stars, 5. Um, but I think it is like, even if something I have a lot of problems with it, but also I enjoy some aspects, I usually give it 1 star. So then in my head, I'm like, oh, it's 100% bag, even though maybe 15% of it was good. And I was
Mhm.
like, I can still enjoy that. So like, I just think, besides that, besides just like really not giving a book a rating, I think also I'm just gonna decrease the amount of books I'm reading. I read 65 books so far, and
Oh
I just
wow.
feel like, yeah, but I feel like this coming year, I'm gonna really chill. Like, the max I want to do is like 12 books, like, like a book a month. I'm just kind of like I'm kind of losing any desire to read, any like love to read, because it's either I'm reading something because I have it, even
Mhm.
if maybe I don't even like something like that anymore, or it doesn't even attract any interest whatsoever, or I thought the concept was good, and almost every time it is poorly executed. And it just, it makes you sad that it's like, you're just trying to enjoy something. Like, I know in 2013, obviously, I read The Fifth Wave, but I read so many books. Like, I had such a love for books, and I read so many books. Like, I'm sure there was a book or two that I didn't like, but I had such a fun time, and that's like the reading I enjoy. But since I've joined BookTube and done my Goodreads reviews, it's just been like almost everything bad, and it's definitely not. Obviously, it's not self-esteem, but it like book esteem. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a
like
bummer, and it's just like, this is supposed to be my fun time. Like, I shouldn't be like pushing myself through something I don't even like, or being sad and bummed and just about quantity over quality, and I'm sick of it. So I think either I'm gonna like read nothing, or I'm gonna read like that. So, yeah, it's clearly not working, which is sad, but at least I figured it out now, and I'm gonna try something different instead of just being like, oh, that's a problem, but I'll ignore it and just keep on putting myself through it. So
yeah, exactly. At least you're doing something to help make things better for yourself, so that's good.
yeah.
Yeah, I gotta say, like, it is so disappointing when the book concept is really, really good and the execution just isn't there. Like,
Yeah.
it's so frustrating for me to go through that, and I only like have books like that once in a while, but yeah, for you to be constantly feeling that way, I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. Like,
It really
I
is
feel
sad
so
because,
sad.
like, yeah. I mean, like, I'm a movie lover first. Books,
Yeah.
they're around. They're like somewhere over here. They're not even in the like the playing field between me and my love for movies. Like, there are books I like, but like, it's just a movie. I just feel like it has more opportunity because there are so many people working on it. Like, there's the fact that sometimes an actor can really change a character or request a change, and it really just transforms the character, when it could have been, if one person was in charge, would have totally been different and maybe ruined it. And like, multiple writers, or at least all sorts of say in it, and I feel like all that collaborative effort really makes something so much better. And that's why I feel, even though for some people they're like, oh, I don't want to be mean to the author by giving them a 1-star review or being harsh on one person, but I kind of feel like this is your story. You're 100% responsible for it. And I just feel like I can be more critical of them, because I mean, that's their story. Like, they should, obviously it does stink with some movies, where like maybe a studio is being overbearing and it just ruins the story. But it's like, okay, it's the studio's fault. We get it. The director was a good person, tried their best, and like, we kind of understand it. But like, with the book, it's I don't know.
For me,
I don't know
like,
if I'm making sense, but
no, honestly, like for me, like I try to view like writing reviews as this is not for the author. This is for people who might pick up the book.
yeah,
Like that's how I try to think of it, because I don't like the thought of being mean to the author, but also like that's not the reason I'm writing the review. Like I'm not editing their book, like that's a completely different um way I would handle that if I was editing, versus like leaving a review is like, no, that's for to let other people know, like, should they read this book or not, or what works in this book, and stuff like that. So I really try to view it more that way. And yeah, that like every time I review something on BookTube, I really try to do it in that headset that like the author, if everything goes right, will never see this review, and if they do, they've got to understand that that's not at them. Like, it's not for them at all. Like if they need me to tell them how to make a book good, like they have other issues going on then, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, but that's what I'm saying. It's weird about the people that get all sorts conscientious concerned or overly stressed, freaked out. And it's like it's it's not for the author.
This
Like if
isn't.
an author does want feedback or is thinking, okay, this I want to see what people are thinking. If they take it in positively, constructive criticism, good for them. But that's their personal thing. But what it
Mhm.
actually is for, it's like it's for you and it's for whoever wants to read it. Like it doesn't make sense to me that people are like concerned about their own sharing their own opinions. I mean, I know these days things can get a little crazy with sharing opinions, but it's just I find that pretty dumb that it's like you'd be so careful or so. That's what's terrible when people share their opinions and they're like, "Oh, well, you've never written a book, have you? You have no idea how hard it is." And it's like just because,
Right.
like, what if there was a person who built a house and they made horrible foundation and you said you didn't like that, you wanted it to be properly done, and someone's like, well, you've never built a house, so how dare you, like, who are you to say? It's like that doesn't make any sense. That's their job. They're supposed to do a good job.
Right, exactly. Uh,
And the whole thing, art is subjective. Yeah, there are things we're gonna like, there's things we're gonna hate. Like, that's it, you know?
right, yeah. And there's some books I read that I'm like, well, this definitely wasn't for me, but like someone out there might like it and that's fine. Like I don't care like if someone else loves this book that I rated really bad, like it's just an opinion, like it's not
Exactly.
that deep. Like I
Yeah,
can really.
yeah, and I also hate too when sometimes on Twitter, book Twitter, when they're like, share your most controversial opinion or something you didn't like about a specific series or character, whatever, and someone shares their opinion. Now, usually, it's it's fine, no comments. It's just whoever agrees with it likes it. But then something that's more of like a currently trending story and it's like well beloved, they get so attacked. It's like that's ridiculous. Like they're sharing their opinion. It's
I know. I honestly have to like limit my time on Twitter just because like it's very infuriating at times because of like that kind of culture where things just get blown out of proportion or like every opinion is like a side that needs to be like debated and defended. Like it's not good for me. Like my brain, like it just
oh yeah.
is unnecessary stress. And like this would never happen in person in real life. I wouldn't like go up to you in person and be like, hey, like that thing you said about this book I love, that was terrible, like how dare you, you horrible person. That
Or
doesn't
only if
happen.
you're being sarcastic would it work, you know?
Right, exactly, yeah, like that just doesn't happen in like in-person interactions, and the fact that it happens online is so weird to me, but that's just how the internet is. But yeah, I've definitely like learned to, if something is annoying me on Twitter, we're gonna block it out, like, or I'm gonna unfollow someone just because I'm tired of seeing it on my dashboard, and I'm not gonna look at one-star reviews of books that I really like. I will look at one-star reviews of books I didn't like because that is such a
That can
nice
be so
feeling.
fun. It's so fun. I do want to just go back to the fifth wave for a moment.
Yeah, I'm
So,
sorry. Yeah.
no, no, no. We were having a good time talking. It just, I happened to remember a thing I wanted to talk about. So, Now, you've seen the cover of the book,
I
like
have.
the girl, right? And so, like I said, it came out in 2013, and The Hunger Games came out in 2012. I'm talking about the movie. Now,
Okay.
considering, her hair is tied back, and it looks like she has brown hair. And, like, it looks like she's got, like, a jacket on, and I'm just picturing her as Clove from District 2. I'm picturing that actress, like, the way she's looking. And I
Yeah.
remember when I watched the Fifth Wave movie, I'm like, why is Chloe Grace Moretz Cassie? She has brown hair. And then I read this book, and it turns out she has strawberry blonde hair. But they only mention that way too late. Like 75% into the book, I'm like, this whole
Oh.
time I thought she looked like Clove. Are you kidding me? But I mean, I really don't care. I know there have been plenty of times where there's been male characters and they're supposed to be the love interest and they're blonde. I'm like, I don't care. He has to be brunette. I really don't care. Like, other people can have your blonde boys. That's not gonna be me. I don't care. So it's kind of like I'm just gonna accept what I see because I just can't picture Cassie as a blonde. I'm like, a blonde.
I have
I
to
mean, I'm
look
not
at
trying to say like
look.
to be a blonde stereotype, but
I gotta say, I just googled Chloe Grace Moretz. She kind of looks too cute to be Cassie.
right, she's supposed to be like so awkward. That's another thing that was so dumb in the movie. So obviously, they like never interacted, Cassie and Ben,
Yeah.
but then, like they had like a couple things, and obviously she was in love with him, and it's like, okay, great. In the movie, they were at a party and they happen to talk to each other, and when they reunite, he's the
Yeah.
one that's like, remember me? I'm like, are you kidding me? That's not how this works at all.
Wow.
Nothing about remember the babies, nothing about really her crush or anything. It was like, oh, that's the last time I saw Ben Parrish. It's like, what?
That's so dumb. I hate that they put her at a party because that doesn't seem like something her character would do, but I feel like
Isn't.
movies keep doing that just to like try to feel relevant to kids, and it's like not everyone had that experience, and like those are the people that these characters are supposed to appeal to, it's just it annoys me. Like just
Yeah.
the way young adult books are usually when they're made into movies, and the liberties there they take, and yeah, like Chloe looks way too cute to be uh Cassie for how she's described. Like, pick someone who's just like a little unconventionally attractive instead. Like there's definitely actresses out there like that. I
Yeah,
don't know.
absolutely. So that was just something that I was just shocked about. I was like,
Yeah.
what? Like I just remember seeing it that way and thinking it that way. Like, and again, I'm not trying to say that a blonde can only act a certain way, because of course, obviously not. I'm just saying
Hmm.
that that's how I pictured her, like my whole life. I pictured her as brunette, and it turns out she's been blonde this whole time. What? It makes
The
you crazy.
betrayal. Yeah.
Ow! I don't like it.
Um, trying to think if I have anything else to say about the book. I tried making notes for this, and I gave up halfway through. And we pretty much covered everything I did take down as notes. So
Yeah.
I
Oh, let me
finished.
look up my Goodreads. I had a few quotes I saved because I thought it was really good.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you do that. I wish I could do that, but I think that's easier to do on ebook, and I just can't do ebooks.
Well, what I do, because I don't do it much. What I did was, what did I do? When I scroll, sometimes I lose my train of thought. Anyway, something. Once I get there, oh shoot, is it gonna work? This new Goodreads thing is so dumb sometimes. I'm like, oh, this
Yeah.
No. Or you stupid thing. Okay, hold on. I'm trying to find this thing. Oh, man. Okay, status. Okay. All right. Can I see all mine? Hold on. Okay. Okay. So obviously we did that one. What makes you think I'm a virgin? I asked. You wouldn't have hit me if you weren't. Why? Why did
hated
we
that
need that? We
line.
did not need that at all. I'm still salty about that one. It's like, what?
That whole like subplot with Crisco, like I can 100% believe a 13-year-old boy post-apocalypse would be absolutely fixated on the only somewhat close to his age girl in the camp and feel the need to, not be a virgin at the end of the world. Like, that is realistic to me, but like it kind of bothered me that like never once you know like he was like, oh, like you wouldn't be acting this way if I was a hot boy. And like I wish Cassie was like, you're 13, like you're a child, go away, like, because literally like the difference between a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old is like really huge, even though it's only 3 years. Like this boy hasn't even been through puberty yet. Like that's just, it's so gross to me. And then, sorry, did you have something to say?
Oh, I was just gonna say, besides just him trying to get with her, he also grabbed her, and it's like, oh, no
I
one.
don't remember that, but
Yeah, he was like grabbing her, and also like just the fact that he was saying that to her. It's like we have way bigger problems on our hands.
yeah,
The extinction of the world. Like we're not thinking about our bodies right now. We're just trying to survive. Like I thought that was. I hated that so much.
it was
Yeah, when
very
he did say it, you'd take it in a heartbeat if I was hot. I'm like, you're such a baby. Like, shut up. Like, and that's also what made me mad when I forget what it was that Evan offered her. Like, he did something for her and she accepted it, and then she thought back to Crisco what he said, and she's like, "Oh, would I have accepted this if he wasn't hot?" And so then it starts into more of her paranoia again. Like, am I only doing this because he's hot? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh no. Like, she really can't win. It's like, that was
right.
a rough one. But
And I
I
hated that specific line too, that he's like, "Oh, you only acted that way because you're a virgin or something." Like that was stupid. Like
that
it
is so
really,
ridiculous.
anyone who was being like harassed like that would, like, I think he got punched or something by her. I don't remember the specific
It was something
context.
like that. Either slapped or punched. She better have punched him. I forget now.
Yeah, it's
But
like,
I didn't
no,
say
that
what it
was
was.
reasonable. That was a reasonable reaction. Like, even if she like wasn't a virgin, like, he's being a little pest.
Yeah, exactly. I could be wrong, but I think he did call her the B word. I was like,
That's
you're the jerk. Like, oh my gosh. Like she
it's
did nothing wrong. She
he's
was stopping you from
such a brat.
touching her.
Right.
That
Like
was
it's somewhat believable for a 13-year-old boy, but also like he was such an annoying character.
yeah. Okay, so another thing that I thought was a really good quote: "A single death is a tragedy, a million is a statistic, and also it really relates to the current state of things." And it's like,
Yeah.
woo,
That was such a good
that
line.
quote was spitting. It was like speaking up. I was like, whew, they're right. And then I liked this one a lot. It isn't about destroying our capability to fight so much as crushing our will to fight. And that's what was happening to them. And that's
Hmm.
what I'm saying. I thought it was really cool with Ringer where she didn't care. The stakes were against her. She didn't care. She was like, I'm going to fight my way to the top. you know, I'm gonna do this. And I was like, good for you, man. Like, you don't even have like other character motivations. You just want to live, you want to survive, you want to thrive. Like, good for you. Like I said, I may not be the biggest fan of her, but she was, she was thinking properly. Okay. And then another quote, it kind of relates to this. Even the most sensitive person can get used to even the most insensitive thing. And it's like, whew. I mean, it still relates to these days, like the way some people can be so inhumane. And like, the fact that people like discriminate and like treat people like trash, and it's so sad. And like, people are kind of like, well, that's the world we live in, or what do you expect? And it's like, no, I'm gonna call this out. Like, it's ridiculous. And then I was about 51% into the book. I forget exactly why I said this, but I was like, oh my gosh, this book is so dark. I think it could have related to Cassie. Could be wrong though. I think it did relate to her, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like I felt so bad for her. But it could have been.
It's just a comment in general that the book was very dark.
Yeah, I mean, it is really rough, and that's the thing too, because I did a rewatch of the Hunger Games series, and when I read the books and I watched the movies in the time of when we were just having fun, dystopia, woohoo! And it's like, dystopia does not hit the same anymore. Dystopia kind of absolutely sucks. That's like, oh, I hate it. I mean, it's interesting where it shows parallels to our current world, and it's like, oh, hey, look at that. But it's also like, I hate the fact that there is the fact that we can see the parallels in our lives. It's like, we should not see that at all. So, regarding that, so obviously that dystopia, it didn't hit the same. It was like, oh my gosh, this is so sad and rough. And like, all the bad things that happen to those characters throughout the story, it's like, that is so sad. Like, they're just trying to survive. It was rough. All the people that had to sacrifice themselves just to be free. I'm like, no. Anyway, so, then reading The Fifth Wave, it's like, oh my gosh, this was fun the first time I read it, and this one was a little bit rougher. I was like, oh no.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, that's the mark of a good sci-fi, I say, but yeah.
But I did think that scene where when Ringer, she first gets in there and Flint says that, sexist remark, and she just gets him, and it's like, oh yes, that was awesome.
I love that she comes in there and she's like, I will not have any sexist jokes, and then Flint says something, and then she delivers on that promise that she will not tolerate anything. That was very good.
And I thought it was good. Like, she commanded the room. She, walked straight up to Zombie. It was like, oh, good for you, girl. Like,
yeah.
Like, I thought that was cool. But, and then, when we find out Ben, we're the fifth wave, it's like, whoa.
Yeah,
then, like,
I love that.
Oh yeah, it was cool. I remember the first time I read it, I was like, whoa. And obviously I already knew this, but I felt like, I know the fourth wave and the fifth wave are definitely different, but I feel like people are already doing the fifth wave and the fourth wave. It's like, because of silencers, humans are killing each other regardless.
Yeah,
like,
it kind of felt
or not.
too similar to me.
They are indoctrinating the kids, and the kids thinking they're helping the world are killing them, and it's rough. But it's like, that's what I kind of felt. Like, I'm not saying that the fifth wave was a weak new wave. I just felt like it was kind of piggybacking already on the fourth wave. I was kind of like, couldn't do a little bit more? Like, I get it. Military, rough. That's horrible. I felt it could have done a little bit better, because, like, all the other waves were, like, so different. And I thought that was a good way. But I felt that one was like, I get it. I don't know.
I definitely felt similar, that, like, both the fourth and fifth waves just seemed too similar. And like you said, the other waves were so different from each other that it's like, We couldn't have differentiated a little bit more, but it is a very cool moment when the book name is said in the book with, oh,
Yeah,
we're the fifth wave.
yeah, that was really cool. Okay. Mm. And then I also thought that was cool. Once they're in the whole compound and they're stuck with like the people Vosh has left and is like, okay, take care of him. We're gonna kill the boy, and it's like, oh no, not Sammy. And then Evan's there, and they're talking, and it's like, they introduce themselves, and Ben's like, I'm Ben Parrish, and Evan's just like, Ben Parrish, that Ben
Yeah.
Parrish. I mean, like, it really is like. I get they're both in Ohio, but the fact that they're in the exact same place, it's a little like, whoa, 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 buddy. Like, it's one of those things that really is like, it could only happen in a book,
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of weird that of all places this was centered around it's Ohio. You
Well,
know?
yeah,
Like
well,
I feel like we have more prominent army bases in the United States that this could have been centered around. Are you Googling that?
oh, I was just trying to see, like, why Ohio? Like, I know sometimes for some authors, they do it because they live in that state,
I
but
think Yancey's from
even
Florida.
Florida, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't remember what the army base they went to was called. Like, I don't know
oh,
if
it was yeah, it was Camp Haven.
Camp Haven. I'm just like wondering if, well, this is in Wisconsin.
No,
Uh,
right? Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
no,
it
that's
was supposed
def.
to be a death camp. That was the whole thing. Like all those kids were getting killed. That was what they were saying. All
Hmm.
the bodies that were there, they just kept on killing them. If they realized or were fighting back, kill them. They're dead. It's like, whoo.
That's
Oh,
super dark.
yeah, that was intense. And I'll say too, like the things that happened to the characters, like the fact of how destroyed Ben was when he was like trying to find Sammy, and they were all having to help and everything, and how hard it was for them to even get out of the compound because it was
Right.
all destroyed. I'm like, man, that is so crazy. And of course, in the movie, they were just like, oh, nothing happened to this guy. He's fine. I'm like,
What the heck?
I hate that
I
so
want to
much.
like rage watch the movie now.
Yeah. No, but even because I decided, I don't know why I decided, but I was like, okay, let me check out some of the clips from the movie. I even watched the ones where they show the waves. Even the waves were lifeless. I was like, man, how could they disappoint that badly?
That's crazy. I don't have high expectations for the movie now after this, but I think it will be really fun to tear apart afterwards. So
It's like,
I'm
ah, yeah,
probably
what
gonna watch it.
happened? Yeah,
Right. I don't know. They probably were like, yeah, like this kind of story's trending, so we're gonna make a movie of it and I'll make lots of money, and then it was
yeah.
just crap.
Yeah, I remember though when I watched it, I was like, oh, Sony clearly cannot make a young adult book adaptation because this sucks.
Yeah.
I was, I was like, I was in the middle of it and I'm like, oh, this is terrible.
Oh god, that's the worst.
But I do think it's interesting sometimes when we have memories, but it's actually very different in like the actual story. So there was, how sometimes they were in the house, Cassie and Evan.
Mhm.
So the scene where, obviously, like sometimes like there was like a fireplace. It didn't happen that much, but sometimes there was a fireplace and they were chilling there. Well, for some reason, I remembered it like when they had to deal with those people shooting at them and he got shot and everything. I remembered it in my head, over 8 years, you kind of, the memories just like,
Yeah.
anyway, I remembered it like, no, they were in the house. And it's like, no, they left the house. And I read it and I'm like, they were doing it in the dark. They didn't really have anything. Like, I remember it very differently. I was like, oh, that is not what happened. I was like, I also was surprised at how few instances they even had with each other. And the fact that it was split up the way it was, where it was like you had Cassie, you had Zombie, you had a couple other perspectives like mingled in there for like a page or two. I was a little disappointed because I'm like, Cassie. I mean, like I said, this time, unfortunately, with the audiobook narrator, didn't care as much, which does make me sad. Like I said, it's like she was like one of my favorite characters. Come on. So, or at least I definitely liked her. Well, whatever the case, that's how it went. But I'm really glad that we were able to buddy read this book because it was a lot of fun. So
Absolutely. I love doing buddy reads, so anytime.
yeah, so obviously you're into sci-fi and everything.
Yeah.
I have to rate it based on a like on a sci-fi scale. Like 10, one of the best you've ever seen, to 1, this is the poorest attempt at sci-fi I've ever seen.
I think, oh god, I gotta think how to assign it to a number, but it's definitely like one of the better sci-fis. I gotta say, I'm not big on alien invasion plots, but I did like the way this one was done. So like, because I know like there's like at least 2 alien invasion plots I've read this past year that I'm like, these sucked. Like, these are not good at all. Um, But, like, again, like, it wasn't completely solid because, there were parts of it that I wish were explained a little bit more, and, like, it's hard for me to judge that because, like, there's the small possibility the next book might explain it because it is a series. So I'm thinking, like, an 8 or a 9, to be honest. I don't think it's, like, the best sci-fi book I've ever read, but like I was super impressed with it. Definitely one of the best YA books I've read for sure.
That's good. That's good. Well, I'm glad that, it was up to your standards too, because like anytime I see like anyone like being like, this book sucks, I don't understand why anyone likes this, even though I say that all the time for other stories.
Yeah.
No, my heart, how could you do this to me? And when you were telling me that you weren't sure between a 4.5 and 5, I was like, please do 5. But it's
Oh,
okay
I'm so
because you're going to have a different opinion,
sorry. Right. No, I still really, really like it, but it doesn't quite hold up to the
And that's
five-star reads
okay.
I've
I mean,
had
it
this
really is
year.
okay. Like,
And I really enjoyed it too, so.
no, absolutely. I'm really glad that you liked it because, and I'll say too, before we started it, like when you already started it, I was so scared to read it again. Like
Yeah.
I mean, especially with how it's been for me. Like I did a reread of the selection series last year, and I read
Mhm.
that back in 2014, and I loved it. Like I thought it was great. It got me out of a major reading slump. It was fantastic. I thought it was awesome. And then I read it again. I'm like, what was I thinking? It sucks. And it was very sad because I thought like this was like at least relatively good. It was
Mhm.
not even mediocre. It was just like, why did we read this thing? Anyway, so I was really scared since I had that experience. Um, yeah, like I was even thinking about rereading it this year, and I left it as like my immediate TBR for like at least 6 months. I'm like, I'll read it. When will I read it again? I do not know. It will just sit there. But I'm really glad that we were able to reread it because it was really fun. Like I said, it probably didn't hit the exact same as last time because I read that and I was amazed. But it's also sometimes when it's like, especially with what I said, like I was reading a lot of books at the time, but I was just able to find, and I had different reading interests, I think.
Mhm.
Like, and also, like, yeah, I just feel like at the time I could read something trashy or something maybe not objectively good. that's, I was totally cool with it, or I enjoyed it. Versus now, it just feels, like I said, I feel like part of it's the booktube obsession, the whole thing of being critical and being quote unquote objective, even though you can't be objective. It's subjective stuff. Like, you can give and that's also what's hard for me, because every single time I remember when I would try to rate something 2, 3, 4, 5 stars, I would base it off another story, and then it's like, but it's totally different from this story. Like, and that's okay. You can enjoy the same amount, the same scale. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. It doesn't compute. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad that you liked it again this time, because I was a little worried you were gonna reread it and hate it, and I'd be like, oh god, I just made you reread and hate like one of your favorite books. I was a little worried.
Absolutely, but I'm so glad I was able to read it, because I just feel like, yes, Cassie's perspective didn't have much going on, but it was more about her internal conflict, and I thought that was great. Like, that was so well done, and I totally related to what she was going through, and it really would be. I mean, but to be fair, for me, I know I'd be gone like during one of the first races. I'm like, I'm out, like, I'm also like, why fight? It just seems so rough. Like, 97% of the world is gone, and with the aliens, you don't know what they're doing. Like, that would be rough. But I think also with what you were saying about like how this alien invasion story was different, it did way better than like, or at least it did it in a different way, and both sides are good. It's just different. Ones where like they have like the real aliens, the alien bodies, and it's like, well, then you're gonna see them and you know what to do. Probably, yes, shoot up, do some laser guns, something, get rid of them. Cool. But this, I mean, it did so good where it's like the enemy is you. As far as you don't know. Like, I thought that was cool. Like, the whole thing where it's like you can't really stay human when humanity seems like the villain. I don't know. I thought the whole moral dilemma was really cool.
Definitely, yeah. I think that's like even better than any of the violence in it. What was most exciting about it is kind of like the mental state of the characters and going on that trip with both Cassie and Zombie.
Yeah. And I do find it sad. Like I said, hindsight is such a jerk. Especially where it's like, oh, was it really that good? And I'm like, maybe it is a 4-star. No, I will say a 5-star.
It's a 5-star.
Especially because it even fits my standards now. And it's definitely better than the books I've rated 5 stars this year. So it's like, oh, this is 5 stars. Absolutely.
That's awesome. I'm so happy for you, though. That's amazing.
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to like making my video of like best, the top 5 books of this year, and it's like, well, that's easy. I did 5-star reads, so it works out. But it's just hard with it this time because I mean, I really like plot-driven books, and this is cool. It is cool that it is character-driven, and things do happen. That's why I think this time around I was more compelled by Zombie's story, because things happened, and I thought it was cool. Also, this time I didn't like the what is it? Side characters, all those side characters that were a part of the team the first time I read it. But this time I was cool with it because it's like, yeah, they're all trying their best. I can't tell you, I couldn't really tell them, distinguish between most of them. I'm like, Pudge Cake or Pudge, I don't know. There was something, Pound Cake.
There's Pound Cake. There's like, I think Oompa. It was like Oompa.
Yeah. I was
and Dumbo. Those 3, I got confused all the time.
I really couldn't. I couldn't tell the difference, and it's like, okay, they're not that important. I'm just gonna accept it and just see what happens. But I will say, during the attack at the end, where Bosch is just destroying everything, I got a little confused when they were like all sorts turned around and going places.
Yeah.
Where they were running to. Also, when I first read it, I could have sworn it was more of a, it wasn't like a total, everything was destroyed. Like they were able to, I know they were able to get onto the truck and drive away, but I didn't know it was that close. The fact that Ben had to grab her and like throw her on the truck, it was like, that is intense, especially with all the injuries he has. And like I said, it's so annoying that the movie, of course, a movie is not even going to care about it. But that happens every time, where it's like, if they have a huge head gash or something, the next scene they got like a little stitch. It's like, no, that's a way bigger injury.
Yeah.
They act like, characters are indestructible, and it's like, no. And yeah, anyway, so some of that stuff was definitely interesting. So
Nice. Are you reading anything now?
I'm trying to read this book, Your Life Has Been Delayed. If you've watched Manifest, have you heard of that?
I haven't, no.
Okay, so Manifest, basically what happens in that show is these people get on a plane. When they land, it's 5 years later. And so the people have to grapple with the fact that it's 5 years later, deal with the fact, some of their families members have died, or they've gotten engaged to someone else, or they're with someone else. And it is rough. In addition to that, they also have these abilities, and they call them callings. And they have to deal with that. Like, usually they're helping to save people, and that show is so good. And I'm very happy because, they have 3 seasons. Then the show got canceled, and everyone tried to save Manifest. Unfortunately, Netflix was like, okay, 1 more season. Even though it should be they should have let it be 6 seasons. At least they saved that one. And maybe they will just make another one if people really like it. But maybe they're like, we ended it. Whatever the case. Anyway, so that idea of, basically accidentally time traveling, they have no idea how it happened. But basically, in Your Life Has Been Delayed, it's 1995, and this girl gets on this plane to go home. The plane lands, and it's 25 years later. So it's 2020. But
oh my god.
I don't think they even say it's 2020, because I think everyone wants to forget about 2020.
Yeah.
1995, 25 years later. But like I said, I do have it, the physical version of it, and like I told you before, it's like I just can't seem to read. Like, I can't just and read it, which makes me very sad, because this is like the book I've been hyped about for like months. Like, this better be good. And like I'm saying, like, I don't have to read it right now. Clearly it's not working out, which does bum me out, but it's also like, okay, I can accept that. So,
yeah.
But it's something I just am very much looking forward to.
It sounds like a really cool and unique plot, so.
Yeah, and I love time travel. I think time travel is great. Like, I remember, I don't know, have you heard of Margaret Pearson Haddix?
It sounds vaguely familiar, but I can't think of.
Oh, that's okay. It's like this children's, fiction writer. I read her Missing series. Oh my gosh, those books were so good. Basically, it's like, the first book starts off where all these kids, it's like, it's our present day. I mean, not our present day, 2006-ish, 7-ish, whatever present day. And it's like all these babies, but it's actually these babies, it was time travel, and basically these babies were stolen from different times in history. And so, like, I mean, that's what you find out in the first book. And then in the series throughout, they're putting these people back, making sure that the timeline is corrected and everything. And it was really good. I remember how much I enjoyed that.
That's really cool. I've definitely seen that book before in the store, but like I didn't know it was like time travel. I just assumed it was like a drama, you know? But
Uh,
I'm so bad at judging covers, to be
yeah,
honest.
no, absolutely. I never did finish it though because we were supposed to find out the main characters, because the main character is one of the babies that was on the plane. Um, uh, this last book, we're supposed to find out what his identity was. I never found out because I think I stopped reading, and the last two books I didn't read. But I mean, honestly, like, I don't think I'll go back because I mean, the last book I read about it was like it had something to do, or at least it was in the same timeline as Albert Einstein, and I'm like, okay, whatever. But some of the stuff was interesting. No, but the
That's
series
cool.
was great. At the very least, the first book was awesome.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't know you were into time travel. That's really
Oh
cool.
yeah, I love time travel. Time travel is great. And like Back to the Future, one of the best movies.
I
So
do really like that movie, yeah.
yeah, and that's still what gets me angry about the movie Avengers Endgame, where they're like, "Oh no, the time travel in that movie is so ridiculous," and it's like, dude, your time travel is so stupid. What are you even talking about?
I know.
No. Like, and also, like, why would you slam other time travel just to make yours seem better? It's like
Right.
who is gonna agree with you right now?
Just let it happen, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, I didn't like that movie anyway. But it was like,
I didn't watch it, but like I have no interest in watching it.
oh, it's bad. So don't bother.
Yeah, I haven't heard like anything good about it, so I'm like, I'm
Yeah,
not gonna watch
but that's also what disappoints me about the fact that all the Marvel stuff has to relate to the fact of what happened in Infinity War and Endgame, and now it's like we just can't forget about the stupid time travel baloney. I'm like, no,
it.
ugh,
Yeah.
makes me sick.
I liked it a little bit more when they were separate, you know, when it was just like separate characters and separate
Oh
movies.
yes,
Because they
yes.
had so much more room to play with it, and now it's like getting too much confusing with the timelines or whatever, with all the different stories and different writers too. You know, if everything was being written by the same person, like I think it would flow better, but it really is kind of just all over the place for me. So I really just like cherry pick like what movies I want to watch in the
Exactly.
Marvel universe, because I'm just like
Yeah.
I can't watch them all. I don't have I don't have the strength for it.
Well, I think too, like, I mean, some of them are so different. Like, I like more the blockbuster types. That's why I liked Iron Man, the Avengers. I
Okay.
thought those were good. Like, there are probably others, I just can't think of them, but definitely those are like my top two. Like, they were great. And yeah, just and the fact that now it's like every movie has to partner with some other character. It's like, come on, man, let them do their solo mission. And that's what
Yeah.
was so stupid. Do you care about Spider-Man Far From Home
Oh my
spoilers?
gosh, no, you can spoil
Okay,
anything you
okay.
want
So
about Marvel.
yeah, in Spider-Man Far From Home, it's like um it's like this whole huge threat. It's more like an Avengers level threat, but it's a Spider-Man movie, so
Oh,
he's
yeah.
gonna be the only one in it, right? And
Yeah.
so, but then they go on to have a whole scene where he tries to say, "What about this character? What about that character? What about the other character?" And they don't have any good reason why they're not there or they didn't call them. So it's like that's stupid. Why would you bring it up if you
Right.
don't even have a good reason for it? It made no sense. So it's just one of those things where it's like now it's like And that's another thing too. Apparently people didn't really want to see Ant-Man because it was too grounded in reality and they wanted to see aliens and stuff. And I'm like, no, I want more the real world, the Earth, but also I don't like Ant-Man, so I don't
I
care
don't
about that
yeah, I
either.
can't get interested in Ant-Man, like,
It's weird.
so
Yeah,
weird.
little ants. I'm like, what?
Right.
But yeah, like especially with phase 4, like I've seen some of it, I've tried some of it. I'm just like, I mean, a lot of the phases have had their major downs and some ups, but
Mhm.
clearly, I mean, some of Marvel I can take, and others it's like you guys are so ridiculous. And the fact that the fans, like the fact that people were pointing out the flaws in the time travel and the flaws in just the general way things happen in Avengers Endgame, and people were like, "Oh, this happened because this, that, and that reason. You're stupid if you think that's bad." It's like, no, you're stupid for not taking reasonable criticism, or at the very
Oh
least,
my
if you
god.
disagree, move on. You don't have to be a jerk to people.
Right. This is like literally taking me back to when I used to be into Doctor Who and like literally the same things was going on where like the episodes wouldn't make sense and then like, I would complain about it and then other people would be like, "Oh no, like you're stupid for not understanding that." I'm like, "No,
Right?
this isn't logical. This is bad writing." And like I haven't been able to watch Doctor Who since because it just completely ruined it for me. But
Yeah, I mean,
also, the
that's,
writing was really bad too at the time, so
yeah, I mean, toxic fans are like literally the worst. Like, what is your guys' problem? And that's the thing too. It's like I I can care about something a lot, but like
right.
I can move on. Like I care about something a lot. I love something a lot. It's great. And if someone has a criticism of it, I'm like, oh, and then I move on.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not going like
I feel like you think what? But like I'm not
it
gonna fight someone, like
makes no sense. And like I just hate the fact that those people, I mean, it's clearly, I mean, I hate that phrase, but it's so true. Misery loves company. And it just sucks because it's like people are just sharing their opinion. Like let them breathe. Ugh.
it sucks because I feel like negativity brings more of a response than positivity does, but like the positivity is what makes fandom fun, like
Yeah.
I don't know, but
Yeah. Well, I'll say, I mean, this doesn't relate to fandom, but just regarding what you said about like the positivity versus negativity. Now, I'm speaking more on like rant reviews versus gushing reviews because I distrust gush reviews so much. Like, I'm not saying, like I'm sure there are people, they're they're genuinely saying this is great, and they're like, I mean, I just can't trust them because they just give everything all this love, and I'm like, how am I supposed to buy, like trust you, like you think everything's good. So
right.
but then with the rant reviews, like it's just fun, and like I have way more to say with rant reviews versus what I like usually with the ones that I do like, I'm like, it was good, the character writing was good,
Yeah.
good. And that's all I can really say. I'm like, what? Yeah.
I
Like,
always do have a lot more to say when I don't like a book.
right? Like there
Because
was
then I'm
this,
picking everything apart.
right. Like there was this book I rated 4 stars this year called Reboot. It's basically this book about basically there was a virus that went around. Bear with
Oh
me here,
god.
okay? A virus went around anyway. It killed a lot of people, but there were people that died and they came back to life. And so what happens? Yeah, so like there was like a thing with the virus, and it doesn't even matter if you had the virus and were cured by it, as long as you had the virus and you had the certain gene or a certain genetic makeup. Basically, if you die and come back to life, you're a reboot. And a reboot is powerful, and it depends on how long you were dead. If you were dead for a longer period of time, you're stronger. And the main character, Ren, she was dead for 178 minutes, so she's like one of the strongest.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it's kind of set where they're like more in the military. Well, military. I mean, it's kind of like their government. Yeah, but they do have their guns. Anyway, I guess it's kind of military police type thing. Uh, you know, yeah, that's right. So basically, the reboots, they can only be kids because they kill adult reboots because they go insane or crazy or whatever. And also, people distrust reboots because they're more humanity, human feeling, emotions. Like, they really don't feel it. Now, if you're dead for less time, you are more human, or you have emotions more human, and you are weaker because you're more human. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
one thing in that story is that it's second class citizens. Like, I mean, they're literally slaves. Like, they have to do whatever the humans want. They have to do their
Yeah.
bit. And they're all kids. Like, they can't really say anything to, you know, whatever. But I really liked it. You know, even though people would be like, isn't it better if these people are free? The way that the author orchestrated the start of the story, and the fact that the main character was happy in the role she had because she was like the top person, and they really respected her, and the humans gave her way more rights and abilities, and like she had more clearance, and just the way that that was what she liked to do, because she can't relate to the other reboots because almost everyone else is so human and talkative and having fun. And she died in a horrible way. She was like shot. She was like 11 or 12. She was shot like
What?
12 times. I could be wrong, but she
Oh
was
my
shot a
god.
lot. And yeah, it was really rough. Anyway, the book was so good. I'm just, I really
No, that
put a
sounds
downer there, but the book is so good.
cool. I'm gonna put that on my TBR to look out for.
Like, there's a character that's the reason that she kind of like changes her ways and realizes that the government isn't so great, even though, like I said, I thought the way they were working the system was way more fun. But there was a character that's like such a little sweet cinnamon roll, and she's just like, what am I gonna do with you? But she can't help but like him, and I'm like, oh, that's cute. But anyway, oh, I liked that book so much. It was great.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna look out for that one now.
Yeah.
Gonna
Um,
look at these
Unfortunately, I decided to read the sequel, and that's why I'm just like, I don't think I could do that to the fifth wave. I don't think I could
Oh
read the
no.
sequel, because Rebel, the sequel to Reboot, was horrible. It made me so sad that they could treat this book so badly. Like, they only had like 2 or 3 settings, places to go. Like, the story was trash, and like not much was going on. I'm like, how do you call this a story? Like, how is this a chapter book? This what? No.
Oh my gosh. That's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's surprising too. I'm like, how do you write like a really good first book and then just like not write a good second book? I don't get it, but
Yeah, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but they should have just left it as a standalone, and that's what I was thinking. I was just gonna leave it there, and for some reason, I'm like, maybe it's good. No, it was not.
mm-mm.
And that's why I've just decided I'm done with series. If I have it, fine, I'll read it. But I think series, it's just like, no. People do the most, and usually it's so like the story's ruined. Like, they just stretch it out, add all these new characters, and I hate that. Like, I like established characters. I'm cool with that, but then when they bring in all these new people, I'm like, nope, I don't like that. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I by far prefer the standalone myself, and yeah, it just seems like when they start to do that and bring in extra characters and all that, it feels like they're just diluting the story that they had in the first one, and it's like, just give it a rest, you know?
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Alright, I think that's gonna be it for me today because
Yeah,
I'm, like,
no, absolutely. I
trying to
was
get
getting
better.
very tired. I've been up for almost 24 hours, so
What the heck? Go to bed, Jesus.
I know. It's crazy. It's crazy. I've been having the worst sleep. That's also probably
Oh,
why I can like barely read. But like, yeah, I was able to get 8 hours yesterday, but then I
that's
woke
good.
up at 12 a.m. and it's 10:05 right now. I'm like, ooh, dead.
Ooh,
So it's just
okay.
been terrible. Like I said, like I just hope I can figure out how to sleep normal again because I hate this so much. It's terrible because, you know, I'm getting up in the middle of the night, I can't get back to sleep. And
Mhm.
then whenever I go to sleep, I get like 5 or 6 hours of sleep. And it's like, that is not sustainable. I can't do this anymore. I hate
That's
it.
yeah,
Oh,
I used to have really bad insomnia for, like, years, so I
oh yeah.
understand it's like torture to not be able to sleep normally, so I feel for you.
Thank you. I hope I can, get over this. But anyway, it was so awesome to be doing this buddy read.
Yes.
And I know barely any people popped in, but anyone that popped in, thank you so much for watching with us. And I hope you guys, since we talked somewhat about it, you give it a try because the fifth wave is amazing. And also try Reroot if you want. So anyway,
Yeah.
uh, I'm just like, read what I say that you need to read. Anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah, so, maybe you'll see Robin doing some reading of the other fifth wave books, or you'll see us doing another buddy read like this. So stay tuned, guys. Do you have anything, Robin, upcoming on your channel?
I just have my wrap-ups coming up, both the December wrap-up and the end of the year wrap-up,
Yeah,
and I think that's all I can manage to do this month because I am
right?
so behind on everything.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing compared to me. I'm thinking about putting all my February through December wrap ups. I'm thinking about doing those videos. Like, yes, I have almost all my reviews written. Like, I only have like one or two that I need to actually write up. Like, the fifth wave, I'm like, I still got to figure out what I'm going to say. Uh,
Yeah.
and then like there are other things I'm thinking about doing, and I'm like, how am I gonna do this before the end of the year? And then I'm like, maybe I won't. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. I might end
I
up doing
feel
nothing.
you. Okay. Well, whatever you end up doing, I'm sure it'll be great.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for anyone who is joining. Uh, and stay tuned for other things and go visit Robin's channel.
Oh, thank you. All right, thanks everyone. Have a good night.
Goodbye.